heard they checking for me, no one checking on me, so I had to go run up a check. I got the message on me, ain't no flexing on me, my attorney gon' call and collect. Blessings on blessings for me, my successes only made them envious, they got upset. I had to put all their egos in check. I want the money, the power, respect, and I heard you know so.
The NBA draft is happening as we are casting. It is incredible, and there's so much to talk about, specifically when it comes to the hometown Detroit Pistons teams. A team, I should say. There's not more than one. It feels like it with all the action that they've had going on today. It's been incredible. But it's going to be really interesting because while I am ecstatic about, outside of Ryan, there's probably nobody else who's more amped about how the Pistons did than how I feel. Paul's on the exact opposite spectrum. And so my big picture last week, Paul, since you weren't here, I was adamant about Jaden Ivey. Adamant. He was the guy, and obviously it happened. So my thoughts, you can go back to that big picture if you really want to see it. Since you are the dissenter, I want you to have a chance to explain why you are not in step with the entire city of Detroit.
All right, you're overselling it a little bit how upset I am. I'm not like devastated. It's not as bad as the Lions trading up and making a pick that I just thought was absolutely horrible value. See, something Troy Weaver has done that I'm not sure the Lions understand is he has maximized value this draft. Which is, to me, is the most important thing overall. What I like about this is even if there's a difference in opinion on projecting a player, how I have a player ranked or how someone else may have a player ranked, it's all about value, right? But I am very worried, and I want Pistons fans to be careful what they wish for, because they got what they wished for. And they mocked the Kings. And this is, of course, it's the meme, right? The Kings can do no right. And everyone that goes after the King is going to be the King's pick is going to be a surefire star. And I think that may be true. Unfortunately, I think that may be the player that went 2 picks after the Kings picked. We wanted Ivy as a fan base. Our fan base wanted Ivy. Obviously, our team wanted Ivy. I am speaking for most fans because it was the absolute consensus. They wanted Ivy to fall here. I'm not saying it's every fan, but I have seldom seen a fan base in such lockstep. I would say that if you were to poll fans on the pick, we're like a 96% like approval of Ivy as the pick, which that's unheard of. Like, that just doesn't happen in sports. So when a team's fan base likes a player this much, it's ecstasy throughout. It's just complete, pure, unbridled excitement. And I wish I could share in that. The problem is Jaden Ivey scares the crap out of me. I think there's a lot of red flags. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer on such a great day. I don't. But right now, as an NBA player, and I know he hasn't taken a single dribble on an NBA court yet, but he sucks. And the reason he sucks is a few clear and obvious reasons.
So fast.
Listen, and he can become a great player. And of course, we hope he does. Maybe he becomes Derrick Rose, as you would know all about. But right now, he doesn't have a shot, which is the probably most important thing in the NBA. And he doesn't play any defense. So we're sold on this idea of he has this incredible upside. He's super athletic. He's fun to watch. But you're talking about a guy that at Purdue had the ball in his hands all the time, had an offense that was catered to him, had a ton of freedom in that offense, which I know you don't like Matt Painter. I know you don't like Matt Painter.
I just straight up disagree because they force-fed Zach Edey into their offense when he shouldn't have been.
His usage rate was 27%. That is extremely high.
That's fine, but his skill set needed an open paint, and that's not how that offense was run.
Well, we just drafted Jalen Duren, and we have Isaiah Stewart, so it's not like we're not going to try to feed the post.
High screens, homie.
Cade Cunningham needs the ball a lot more than we're going to give Jaden Ivey the ball. Cade Cunningham needs to be the guy with the ball.
Jaden Ivey was never going to be the primary ball handler anyway. That was never going to be the case.
Of course, but he thrives when he is. The problem is he's a volume shooter that is not a high percentage shooter. And again, like I know that fans don't generally care about this, and he has the athleticism. Maybe he can improve there, but he is bad on defense. And we have seen what a superstar that is bad on defense can mean in the NBA. I look to Ja Morant, and let's not make any
There's
bones
a lot of
about it.
comps there.
Jaden Ivey is not Ja Morant. He has so far to go offensively to become Ja Morant, and he doesn't sling the rock around like Ja Morant can. But even as sweet as Ja is on offense, he has not been able to get that team to the next level in large part because his defense is so bad. And Jaden Ivey has to get to that point. Jaden Ivey can't shoot the ball right now, and people want to talk about his mid-range. His mid-range concerns me less than it does most people because I don't really want him taking a lot of mid-range shots.
Nobody does that.
I don't want to be what the Suns were this year. It's an inefficient shot. We know that. And unless the NBA changes where they move the line back 3 feet, which I don't think they're going to, it's not that important. But as a shooter in general, he's not very good. Can he improve? Of course he can.
I have a comp, and there's a few things. So first and foremost, obviously, the primary point that I would argue with is that I don't know if there is anybody in the top 5 that has the least amount of pressure that Ivey's going to have. I mean, Cade, especially just being the rookie season that he had, and also just his demeanor about it. I just think this is perfect for Ivey. Like, out of all of those 5 spots, if you're thinking about this from the player's perspective, there is no better spot for him. There just isn't. It's in a city that is going to embrace him with everything. He's crying. He's talking to Spike Lee, trying to tamper with him. And he's like, nah, fam, I'm going to Detroit. Detroit basketball. He's tweeting that out and everything. Everyone's going to love him. And he's going with a rookie who was the number 1 overall pick and by far the city's favorite player now. And it's not close. So there's no pressure there. What I would hope is that he is going to have the sort of, it's obviously got to be higher because he is the number 5 overall pick. But I look at a player like Ayo Dosunmu, who I know you and I did not like at all coming out of Illinois. But he actually had a surprisingly effective season with the Chicago Bulls. Now, obviously, Dosunmu is very different because he was picked much later, and he's on a roster that is more ready-made. But you want to see that sort of assertiveness. That's more of what I care about. I don't care about his shot per se because Cade is the primary ball handler and will get him open shots. He doesn't need to make his own shot. You obviously give the Ja Morant example. What I would counter with that is that Ja Morant is the Cade of his own team. Ivey will not be that. He'll never be that. That's just never going to be what his role will be. And so there's a very big difference in the type of thing that you can expect from Ivey. What you want to expect from Ivey is he takes pressure off of Cade in offensive sets. And that is going to help out a lot when you have 2 giant trees down there, whether it's Stewart and Duren or potentially DeAndre Ayton, which I am with you. I am not a super fan of DeAndre Ayton either. But having this sort of rim running type of offense, it's exciting. I'll be honest. Like the Detroit Pistons out in the open court is going to be a sight to see, and I'm really amped about that.
See, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer today, and I will say I'm not saying that Ivey is not going to develop into a great NBA player. Certainly, of course, I hope that he does, and he has the tools to do so. It's not that his shot is so broken that he can never become a better shooter. He has elite athleticism. He has great handles. He can get to the rack seemingly at will, at least certainly in college he was able to. The NBA is a different ballgame, we know. But he has developable traits. But that's the key, is he has so many things to develop. And what scares me is Detroit's done the shooting guard that can't shoot thing before. We had KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, in Detroit for years. And what's even worse is I know it's not the same. They're not the same player, but he was a shooting guard that couldn't shoot, and it was something that was frustrating very much back then. But one thing KCP did to at least make up for it a little bit is KCP played very nice defense. He was very active on the defensive end. He was a savvy defender. It's something that Ivey has done none of, and he hasn't shown an ability to do it. And you can project him. You can say, listen, he has decent size. He has great athleticism. We should be able to turn him into a decent defender. But that's a very idealistic thing, that it doesn't always work out that way. And what concerns me, it's not just that Ivey was the pick, because while there are other guys that I would have liked more, it's specifically who went immediately after Ivy to the Pacers at number 6, and that's Benedict Mathurin. And he has
weird.
what
I don't
I
get
think,
this.
You don't get my love for him?
I don't get how you're like this upset about Mathurin. Like, I don't know. I don't see how they're that. For one thing, I don't see how they're that much of a different player, for one. But also, again, everything I said in my big picture already stands.
I'm going to explain exactly how they're a different player. All of the red flags that Ivy has, Mathurin doesn't. The three-point shooting, he's a career 38% three-point shooter. He shot almost 42% his first season in college. He shot 37% last season on a very good volume. He took a lot of threes. He is an elite athlete, very similar to Ivy. He can jump and dunk out of the building. I mean, you're talking about a guy that is going to probably be a year one dunk contest participant, which, listen, that's not why you draft him.
That means nothing.
Showcasing a little
bit literally means nothing.
I'm just giving an example of his athleticism, though, because that's all Ivy has, right? Like right now, what Ivy has is athleticism. Mathurin has athleticism to match him. He has all of the shooting that Ivy doesn't. 79% from the line, 38% from deep, 52% from two. He is a very, very good shooter. What he also is a willing and active defender. He is one of the best on-ball, man-on-man defenders in all of college basketball last season. All of the things that I'm concerned that can Ivy develop these things, Mathurin already has, and he has all of the same upside. The only thing that Ivy truly has on Mathurin is his handles. But as a shooting guard, and we already talked that we don't want Ivy to have the rock a lot on his own anyways. He's not going to be bringing it up a lot. We don't want him to be ball dominant. That's not what we're drafting him for anyways. So when I look at what they do similar and what they do different, and I look at upside and projection, I think Mathurin is better now. I think Mathurin has higher upside, and Mathurin's much more likely to be a quality NBA player, let alone possibly develop into a star, and he has the higher floor. I mean, honest to God, it almost feels like the Aiden Hutchinson versus Tavon Walker debate all over again, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't think Ivy
Tavon Walker was the discussion. It was Kayvon Thibodeau here.
Well, that's because Tavon Walker was gone, but he wasn't in play here. I'm talking about for Jacksonville. If Jacksonville took him over Aiden Hutchinson.
Well, Jacksonville are like the Kings, all right? They inevitably, whoever drafts after them always winds up having a star. That's like that is a historical track record. I'll be honest. I'm just glad that you're not doing the Keegan Murray thing. If we were doing that, we'd have a 15-minute show. I'm out and I'm not listening to what you have to say. I have no interest in Murray.
But if I had to choose, see, it's tough because Murray has that perceived high floor lack of upside, right? But right now, Keegan Murray is a way better player than Jaden Ivey. There's no doubt about that. He is an elite shooter already. He knows how to score and put a team on his back when it comes to scoring. So if you had to give me the choice, which it wasn't the choice, I would still be happier with Murray than I was Ivy. But we didn't have to make that choice. We had the easy choice of Mathurin versus Ivy, and we went with Ivy, which is what the fans wanted.
Murray is almost a guaranteed bust. He is almost guaranteed as a bust.
Well, so
part of it is situation, but
it depends on what you consider a bust. Because Murray will be a solid 3-and-D player and play 10 years. Now,
fantastic. Not at number 4.
Okay. Well, and that's what I'm saying. It depends on can he become a star? But who's more likely to become a star, Murray or Ivy?
Oh, I don't think this is even close. Ivy has a substantially
Ivy has to learn how to shoot. If Ivy never gets a shot,
why are you so concerned about that when he is not going to have to? This is the thing I don't think that you are internalizing. There is a Cade-sized issue in this room, and you can't evaluate this guy without that. Murray is alone. He has nobody around him to be able to make him into a star. The best you have is De'Aaron Fox, but he's not nearly as good as Cade.
I'm not talking about team situation here, though.
But it does matter. You always say context. But again, you're talking about context.
The Pistons.
And I think that there's... if Detroit has the choice, Detroit would first off, I think it's infinitely clear that if they still had those two, like let's say in theory,
they would have taken
that
Ivy.
They would have taken Ivy either way. And the thing that is really tripping me up is that like Murray has the same sort of symptomatic issue where Obi Toppin, Doug McDermott, Tyrus Thomas, these kind of like bigger but too small to be in like center and power forward positions, these tweener guys who do really well in college, they stay for a while, they're great college players, and then in the NBA they're at best. On top of the fact that that Iowa hasn't, I believe, I may be wrong, I believe Iowa has not had a first-round NBA draft pick since 1998. There's a reason for that.
Does that really matter here?
Does that really matter? It very much does, because I do not like the system they run there, and I think that for this specific Pistons team, Murray's type of style coming from that Iowa type of offense, no. No way.
What do you think of Victor Oladipo as an NBA player?
Oladipo had a stretch where he did phenomenally, and then there was some mental weakness there that really dragged him down. He really had like 2 to 3 years there at the tail end of his Oklahoma City run into when he got traded to Indiana. He was really good, and then he got injured, and then he started to have a bit of mopishness, which I am afraid of, but I'm not with Ivy because he's with Cade. That just won't fly.
I'm not worried about that in that way. What I am worried is Oladipo was someone to me that was just a step below a star when he was good. Like when he was at his best,
he was close. He was a top 25 kind of guy.
He was like he wasn't quite star status, but he was up there. He was close to it. He was a very good NBA player.
Sure.
Jaden Ivey's a poor man's Oladipo. And I mean poor man's Oladipo.
For now,
you are projecting a lot,
and he has what is going to be a top 10 NBA player as his point guard, which you will continue to clearly ignore, even though it is absolutely essential to his development.
I am not saying that he's not going to develop. What I'm evaluating the pick that we made. No matter who we picked here, they were playing with Cade Cunningham. I wanted Mathurin instead of Ivy.
I think that Ivy will succeed much better without the ball. Mathurin needs to have the ball more. And again,
he doesn't. No, he does not.
He does more than Ivy did because he did in college.
Not at all.
Mathurin was the primary guard for them. That's partially why he was.
Mathurin is a 3-and-dunk guy. He's a spot-up shooter, a get dunks, a play defense guy. He doesn't. It's not. He doesn't. I told you.
You are making him. What you're doing is you are making a great case for Mathurin to turn out like another Arizona guard, Stanley Johnson, because that's what you're describing right now. And I don't.
Stanley Johnson didn't shoot worth a crap. What are you talking about?
I also don't think that there's a great translation from college 3 to NBA for one thing. It's not the same. The spacing's not the same for one.
Well, I hope it's the inverse, and maybe pray to God that Ivy finds an NBA 3-point shot. But we have spent a lot of time.
Look, if Lonzo Ball was able to improve his god-awful mechanics, I think Ivy's going to be okay. And again,
Lonzo Ball shot well in college. It's just weird.
But he had a Tim Tebow type of problem where his mechanics were just.
It worked.
It was weird.
Listen, if it works, it works.
And it worked in college. But okay, and I appreciate you trying to do the pick in a vacuum, but you always remind us big picture, right? It's the name of the show for a reason. The context is essential, and I disagree with you entirely in the sense that, especially. Now that we, to be fair, can be a bit retroactive about our analysis, since they clearly had Duren as a guy that they were grabbing, Murray made no sense then at that point. It makes no sense. And so with that being their strategy in mind, which we'll get into the Duren thing like right after this, all I'm saying is that with what you were saying, between the two, Murray and Ivy in a vacuum, or Mathurin, I guess, of them all, I think that with Cade, the one that works best is the dude who wants to be here. I don't discount that. I think that matters in this market more than maybe any other market in any sport, because you need to want to be a Piston. That's a thing. So the context in it matters, and I think that's a lot of the reason why Pistons fans care a lot as well. But we're going to kind of end this and cap it with something that is equally as important, because the mad lad himself, Troy Weaver, gave everybody a 24-hour head start to dig his grave, and then he bursts out of it and says, "Ha, just kidding, I'm actually a genius." Jalen Duren is a Piston.
Jalen Duren is a Piston, and I love this. I am actually a big fan of Jalen Duren, and I don't want to join in on the Imani Bates hype train, but I don't. Back when people thought Imani Bates was still the sweetest and the next coming,
he's not.
I'm talking about, of course, before he ever went to college, before he even committed to MSU.
Oh, before he was a traitor.
I had said that, listen, I'm telling you guys, this Jalen Duren kid is the best kid coming out of high school. Like, he is absolutely sweet. And I'm telling you, he's better than Imani Bates. And now, just
lo and behold,
a short year and a half later, he's a Detroit Piston at number 13, which was not a pick that we had. Now, Troy Weaver, and this is where I talk about value, he absolutely pulled kind of a coup here. He took Kemba Walker from the Knicks. They didn't want him. They wanted to offload his not large salary. I think it was $9 million. I think that's what was reported. If I'm mistaken, I apologize. But they wanted to offload his salary. And then Detroit, when they traded Jeremy Grant, part of that package, we got a couple second-round picks. And then we got Milwaukee's 2025 first-round pick. So to put this in,
which we all agreed was a terrible pick at the time. It didn't seem like a lot of value.
Well, but we also expected there to be more. In fairness, all of us.
You did. I didn't. I'll be honest. I didn't at all. I was like, God, this seems so desperate.
Because, again, in a vacuum, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. So I'm thinking, listen, they're going to try to do some stuff salary-wise. They have other plans here. Like, this isn't the only move. This is clearly a precursor to more, although there's still more to come from it, probably. Given the
true. I just thought it was only a free agent thing. I thought this was an Ayton only move. And to be fair, I'm not alone.
Horrified me if it was the case, but we're not going to do the free agency cast yet. That's going to be coming up. So we're going to stick to the draft. So to put that into context, we're talking about a first-round pick, Milwaukee's first-round pick in 3 years. So quite a bit down the road. And given what Milwaukee is, unless things just fall apart and Giannis gets traded or something crazy, you expect that pick to be very late first round. You expect it to be in the late 20s, if not even 30, if they were to win the title that year, of course. So it's what we're considering a late first round pick in 3 years. So it does not have a ton of value right now. So he got that in the trade. He shipped that to the Knicks, and he took the Kemba Walker deal. And we thought that's what they gave up for Duren. It does appear that the Pistons also are giving New York a 2023 first-round pick, but it's protected 1 through 18. It is protected again in 24, 1 through 18. Then in 2025, it's protected 1 through 13. It's protected for a long time. And if for whatever reason, if we suck forever, in 2028, it turns into a second-round pick of any kind. Like, it's a very weird.
That 18 spot is good. That 18 spot is a prime spot.
They're going to get a first-round pick from us eventually. It might be
probably 24. I think 2024.
24, like maybe we have like the 16th pick or something. Like that could be it. And then it's less protected as it goes on. So eventually we're going to give up another first-round pick to the Knicks. God knows when it is. But this was to get the 13th overall pick. And so with that, select Jalen Duren, a player that I think is a very good value. He's very young, and he has a ton of upside. We have not talked, me and you have not talked a lot about Jalen Duren because, let's be honest, we didn't know where the Pistons were going to be picking other than number 5. There were a lot of rumblings that the Pistons were going to look to make moves, but we didn't know if they'd end up with another lottery pick, a mid-first round pick, a late first-round pick. So we didn't talk about this scenario a lot. What is your observations on Duren?
I just love bringing in that type of size with the players that you already have. I think that this, and I don't even think with everything we've already established about your opinion of Ivy, I think this enhances that pick a ton. And also, giving someone of that size for Cade to work with in high screen and roll situations and as help on defense. It just as a kind of a dominant post player, kind of a very different vibe from a post player compared to what Isaiah Stewart is. Isaiah Stewart is very much of the same, built from the same brick as Ben Wallace was, whereas Jalen Duren does have some shades of Rasheed more so. And so that type of dynamic between the two of them is awesome. It does bring into question, like, really, is DeAndre Ayton on the table anymore? I mean, you have a front court now, a full front court. I mean, I don't think necessarily Isaiah Stewart's a 30-minute guy, but I don't know. Maybe you do bring in Ayton, and then you have a rotation of all these trees and bruisers. I think it's brilliant. I like it enhanced the Ivy move. I already thought the Ivy move kind of knocked it out of the park, but now I am seriously thinking that maybe the Pistons have had the best offseason this year and will continue to do so, to where there are going to be national pundits who are like, this Pistons team in a year or two is going to be contending for the East. Like, that's how good this makes me feel right now.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think it completely takes them out of the Ayton sweepstakes, unless they were to trade Isaiah Stewart, because you have these two bigs now, and they like Isaiah Stewart. Isaiah Stewart's young. He is a pick that I would say that they hit on. I wouldn't say that I think he was quite a good pick. It's not like he was a top 10 pick, and he's been quite solid for them. I would say exceeded expectations, or certainly at least met expectations. Now You bring Jalen Duren into the mix, a center. Now, I don't know if they're going to play him at the 4. I think he's a center through and through. He's 6'11". He's a big dude. He does not shoot at all. This is not a guy that's going to step out and hit a 3-pointer. And I don't know if I don't really know if he's ever going to develop that. That's not what he is. He's a very good defender. He's a very good post presence. He will dunk all over you. He's pretty crafty around the basket given his age. And that's something that, of course, you expect his repertoire to expand as he plays longer in the NBA. This is a very young kid. I want to say he's 19.
That's wild, because he looks like he's 45.
He's 20.
He looks old.
I want to say he's 19. He was just a one and done freshman at Memphis last year, and again, he really had to take over and lead that Memphis team. And when I say lead, I mean lead, because I don't think much of Penny Hardaway, their head coach, at all.
No,
I don't think he's a very good coach. It is a team that went through an early and mid-season stretch that was just an abomination. Had them really the talk of the town, had their head coach Penny Hardaway lashing out at reporters. Obviously, there was the Amani Bates saga, and then he wasn't with the team, and it was just a complete mess. And through that all, he showed a lot of poise and leadership as a very young, you're talking about a true freshman in college in a new place somewhere he hasn't been. The world kind of feels like it's collapsing around Memphis for a while mid-season. I mean, things were bad. If you're not a huge fan of college basketball, or even if you were, but maybe you don't pay attention to things that go down on in Memphis, like if you're a Michigan State or a Michigan fan, I can't blame you if you're not really paying attention to Memphis basketball.
They were bottoming out, though.
Things got really bad for a while there, and they ended up going to the tournament. They ended up having a huge turnaround, and Jalen Duren was a huge part of that. He plays both ways. He's a very good post presence, mature for his age. He hit 60% of his 2-point attempts, which of course, you should hit a high percentage of them. You're a post player. It would be kind of alarming if he didn't, but no, he's very good. He's a great rebounder. He's a high effort guy. There's a lot to like about him as a young player to throw down in the post. And as you said, you start looking at your young core that you're building. You have your Jaden Ivey, you have Cade Cunningham. Let's not forget about Sadiq Bey. And then some of the depth you have. Who knows? Does Killian Hayes continue ascending a little bit? Let's not forget Killian Hayes was extremely young when we drafted him. He was the youngest player in the draft.
You say continue ascending, but he kind of hit a skid last year.
He was getting better. All right, he's getting better. Like a couple years ago, he was much worse. He's getting better. Like you hope that
you would hope that he was worse a few years ago. That's how progression works.
He was the youngest player in the draft, and he's someone that I believe we took him 7th overall. He was that high upside guy. He was from France, I believe.
Not much upside so far.
Overseas kid. No, it hasn't been a lot. Well, games. He's had a game. Like every once in a while, he'll have a game, and it's like, wow. The dude is sweet, like he can play, but there's just
where the hell is this?
No consistency at all. But if he can even be a nice depth guard in the rotation at 7, that's not what you want. I think he went 7th overall. I apologize if he didn't.
It was in that range at the very least.
Somewhere in the mid.
I'm on a research just to be safe.
Somewhere in the mid-ish lottery. You hoped for more from him, but if we could get a depth piece at this point, and you have Ivy, and if Ivy develops, and you have Cunningham, Sadiq Bey has been a real good wing player. Now you add Duren,
you're right, number 7,
to Isaiah Stewart. Thank you. You have a really exciting young core. Now, you need a lot to pan out for it to go from exciting young core to a potential future contender, but we're in a rebuild. And Troy Weaver is doing an excellent job of maximizing value. Even though I would have rather had Mathurin at 5, that's just my evaluation. I'm not an NBA GM, clearly. So I'm not going to pick bones about the evaluation difference. He is getting good value. Ivy wasn't a reach. There were people that thought Ivy could go even earlier. And I don't mean to the Kings at 4. There were some people that thought he could creep into the top 3. I didn't, but there were some people that thought he could. This is not a guy that was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe the Pistons took him at 5. It was, oh my goodness, I can't believe he was there for the Pistons to take at 5, which is much better. It's so much better than the alternative, even if I'm not in love with the pick, and I at least see the upside there. I do love the Duren pick, and the Pistons aren't necessarily done. Weaver said they may continue to make moves. We know they pick at 36, or they acquired the 36th pick in the second round, so they pick early trading second up again. So there's a lot of options out there.
So with that in mind, for the last part, because this is all Pistons for us tonight, no big pictures, but we'll have a brief, I'll give you about 3 minutes. This is what I ask from you to end the show, all right? Your final thoughts on this. Number 1, not to be cheesy or whatever, but a grade that you would give the draft so far.
I can't do that right now. I can't.
Fine, you don't need to. Then give me a word. I don't need a letter. Give me a word for what you would describe the Pistons draft, and then number 2, as your final thought, a move after this to build that momentum. What would you do after this in order to help out further? Some people may say, Ayton, I have my own idea in mind, so all I want, describe the draft in one word. Give me a move moving forward.
So to describe the draft in one word, I would say fun. Because regardless of what, and I'm in the minority with Ivy, I absolutely am. And to be clear, again, not saying he's going to be a buster. It's this horrifying pick. It's just not who I prefer. But it is exciting and fun to watch. One, we're movers. But we're not movers just under Troy Weaver just for the sake of moving. We're opportunists. We're what I beg teams to be. We're not just like, oh, I'm going to trade up willy-nilly just because I think I need a receiver here. No, Troy Weaver's seen an opportunity, and he pounced on it. He freed up cap space so that we would have flexibility to make moves like this going forward. And it is fun to watch a GM that has foresight. It is fun to watch a GM that's not afraid to move around, but doesn't do it just for the sake of moving around and making a splash. He still does things that make sense team building wise. And that we talk about the big picture all the time in GM level insight. It is so important, the process that you have. I hammered on this with the Lions because you can get lucky with talent. And to win a title in any sport, but especially the NBA, you need to get really lucky and you need to hit on a superstar or two and then coax another one to come to your team and hope you have enough depth to make something happen and you stay healthy. That's really what you need. There's not many Warriors out there where they just hit on a ton of crazy draft picks. You hit on a second round pick. You hit on a mid first round pick in Steph Curry. You hit on a mid first round pick in Klay Thompson to the extent that they did. Like that's not really how championship teams have been built in the NBA lately outside of the Warriors. So
then what's your move?
It is fun to me. My move is, for the most part, sit tight. Don't get antsy. Teams do this all the time. They have a rebuild. Things are going pretty well. Maybe things even get expedited a little bit. They start going too well. And then they get antsy. And they start making moves to contend sooner than they're ready to contend, and it blows the whole thing up. I think the Cleveland Browns are a good example of this. So my move right now is you freed up this room salary wise. Don't go out and overpay a free agent. use that to get more assets by taking on more contracts like a Gordon Hayward or somebody else that another team is trying to offload. And I honestly don't even care who it is because we're not worried about contending right now. This is still a rebuild, all right? We're not doing the Chris Illich thing where this rebuild is 100% done. It's not. We're still in the early stages of this with our young core. So stay patient, stay the course. Don't do anything crazy. Don't expedite the timeline, and use the salary space that you created to take on another bad contract and add more assets.
All right, I'm the inverse. So my guess one word would be very exciting, witty, something along those lines. Just brief. I don't really need to belabor the point there. My only thing would be for going after John Collins. That's been my thing for a while now. Trade with Atlanta. They need to offload, sign and trade, get in another wing type of guy. So that's pretty much it. Paul, we've gone our briefer show, so to speak. A lot of stuff for the Pistons to look forward to in the future. So everybody, fans and friends, I appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week.
I'ma get it, you know I be on the way.